Hi everybody, I'm Professor Sarah West and I'm Director of the Stockholm Environment Institute at the University of York. And I'm here today to talk about the methods papers that we have recently published on SAMHE projects. So these are papers that talk about the methods that we've used as part of the project. Papers, well, when researchers talk about papers, they don't mean like newspapers or bits of paper. They generally mean journal articles or research papers. And these are things that are either printed physically with selection of them that are all similar together in a physical, like leaflet type thing, but thick, or they are just published online. And sometimes they're both an online and a physical copy of it. And what are they for? Well, researchers use these to talk to other researchers about their projects, about what their findings are. And that's what we've done with the SAMHE papers that we've published so far. So we're talking to other researchers about what we found on the project so far and what we hope to find in the future. So we're going to talk about two papers. One of them is what we call our SAMHE Methods paper. And this is led by our colleague Leah. And this is all about what we're going to do in the project, the methods that we're going to use, and our overall way of doing the project. And then the other paper, which I led, is what we call our SAMHE co-design paper. And this is talking about what we did in terms of working with schools to help make SAMHE the project that it is today. So can anybody read the SAMHE papers? Yes, anyone can read the papers. As I said earlier, they're really aimed at other researchers. So the language might be a bit complicated. Every article that researchers produce has to have an abstract, which is a short summary at the beginning of the paper. So it might be about 300 words, which describes the key findings and the methods that we used for that paper. So it's a summary. Those still sometimes might be quite complicated language because, again, it's designed for those other researchers. So we've made simpler summaries of those, which we call lay summaries, on the SAMHE website. We've also got some technical reports on the SAMHE website, and these descriptions of findings that maybe haven't made it into a published scientific paper, but are still really interesting findings that we think schools want to know about. So those are available on our website too. So the SAMHE Methods paper, which our colleague Leah led, really talked about what the SAMHE project as a whole was aiming to do. So it described that we were going to send air quality monitors to up to 2,000 classrooms and provide a web app, which pupils and staff can see their data and, really importantly, can submit what we call contextual data. So this is information, for example, about how many people are usually in your classroom, how big your classroom is, how many windows it's got, when it's being used, those kind of things. So pupils and teachers can upload that data onto the web app and interact with the data that they've gathered and use it to better understand their indoor air quality. And this paper goes into quite a lot of technical detail about what we were going to do with that information. So it describes how we're going to use that contextual information and combine it with other sources of data, so the data coming from the monitors, to better understand air quality in schools. It also talks about how we're going to combine the data from the monitors with other data sets. So this could be, for example, about weather, outdoor temperature, for example, outdoor air quality. Why did we publish the SAMHE Methods paper? Well, it was really important to us that other researchers knew what we were doing in the SAMHE project. And that helps us as researchers, because people will read that paper and think, oh, they're doing that in an interesting way. I wonder if they've thought about doing it in that way instead, or if they combined what I'm doing on my project with what they're doing, that would help us make a much better piece of work. So that's why we publish that methods paper. So the second paper we wanted to talk about was the SAMHE co-design paper. So this talked about how we worked with schools really early on in the start of the SAMHE project, and they helped us shape the project. So what is co-design? Well, co-design is a process of working closely with another group of people, in our case, school teachers and school pupils, to together develop a project that would have been better than if researchers would have just designed it on their own. So what we did in the SAMHE project is we held a series of sessions with what we called our pioneer schools. So these were schools who were just starting out with SAMHE and helping us test what was working and what wasn't working, what they wanted to see from the web app. They helped us design our logo. They helped us decide what we wanted the web app to look like. So it was really important to schools that we saw both activities related to what they could do about with their data, and also actually see their data live in the web app. So that kind of process of co-design, we organised all on Zoom. So we held sessions with pupils and with teachers where we got an understanding of what it was they wanted from the web app. And then later down in the process, we had little samples of things to show them. And we said, would you prefer this one or would you prefer this one? And that process of co-design helped us make SAMHE what it is today. We thought a lot about ethics when we were co-designing SAMHE. So ethics is basically not doing harm to people. And we were really concerned that we wanted to make this project the best it could be, and that we wanted to not harm anybody. And so some of the things that we were thinking about was, how can we raise awareness of air quality, but also not scare people? So make people understand what it is that they can do if they do have high readings, for example, making sure that people aren't unnecessarily worried about the air quality in the school, supporting them to take action, signposting places that they can go to for support. And as part of thinking about ethics and doing things in an ethical way, you have to go through what we call an ethics approval process. And this is where you fill in a form, and it helps you consider all the ways in which people might be potentially be harmed, and what you're going to do about that. And that includes things like not worrying people, but also simple things like, how are we going to make sure that pupils don't give us their names, for example, and then we tell everybody what their name is and what school they're at. We've taken quite a lot of care to make sure that we don't need that information from pupils, and we don't collect that information. So what have we learned through co-design with schools? We've learned so much about how to design projects. One of the really important things that we've learned is that the approach that we're taking, which is called citizen science, is a really excellent way of engaging people with science. And that's not just the science of air quality. Through the co-design process, we found that pupils and teachers were actually really interested in the people involved in the science as much as the kind of subject matter of air quality. So we've, for example, created a careers guide, which talks about members of the SAMHE team and what it is we're doing. And that was because people told us that they really wanted to know more about us as researchers in the project. So I think that's one really important thing that we've learned from the project. I think another important thing that we've learned through the co-design process is that it's just very time consuming. It takes ages to do this kind of work properly, both from the researcher's side, but also from school side, and we're so grateful for the teachers and pupils who've spent all this time helping us design the project and then interacting with the project going forwards. So I think for people who want to do this kind of work in future, really thinking about the amount of time it takes to do this interaction. If you want to find out more about the papers that I've talked about here, you can go to our website, which is samhe.org.uk. Hopefully you all know how to spell Sammy from now on, but it's SAMHE.org.uk. And thank you for watching.